Hi, this is Sarah Mikesell with the Pig Site, and today we're here with Dr. Paul Yeske. He's a veterinarian with the Swine Vet Center here in Minnesota. Thanks for being with us today, Paul.
Well, it's my pleasure to be here.
Very good. And I should place us here. We are actually in Minnesota today, and we're at the Leman Swine Conference, and we're here actually at the pre-conference on Saturday. And you were one of the lucky people to get to present early this morning. And you started out your presentation talking about sow mortality in the U.S., that it averages about 15%. And went on to talk about kind of how do we keep sows robust. Can you tell us a little bit about your message to the audience?
Sure. In today's talk, what we talked about was where's the industry at today, and that's where we use the MetaFarms database to look at that as far as an average for their entire database at 15%. And the goal of today's talk was to talk about some of the impacts, or some of the things that are impacting that. Certainly the health status of the herd, whether we have some of the endemic diseases such as PRRS, Mycoplasma, PED, others, and also do we get the replacement gilts, the replacement animals we're bringing into the herd, do we get them properly prepared to enter the herd and ready to continue to make the herd be productive over time. And so we focused on what's the status of those diseases, how can we bring some of these animals into a herd. We've got to do some acclimation things, and it's going to take different times based upon different diseases. And so we want to make sure that if we do have to acclimate animals and we bring them into the herd, that they're no longer shedding when they enter the herd. And so that's what takes the time and the planning and the testing to ensure that everything is done right. And then we still have to make sure that we manage those gilts properly through their developmental phases. And we want to make sure that we get them to the right age and weight at the time of breeding, and that they've had a recorded heat service. And then making sure they're acclimatized to the facilities they're going to be in. And so those are some things we can do. We know that the challenge has been in the industry is that oftentimes we over-select the gilts and we keep too many that we necessarily shouldn't. And that's one of the challenges that we have to continue to work on. The day-to-day observation and the skills of some of our staff that are out there looking at the sows on a daily basis and making sure we keep that focus. Again, I showed a slide where the Iowa Select Farms have their sow retention specialist. I saw that at the NPIC meeting, and I thought, this is a great idea. It's focusing that attention on retaining the sows and keeping the sows in the herd and keeping the right animals in the herd. And so I think as we go forward, that's something I think inherently we've always thought about, but somebody has to have that job every day. And so if you have that job, then you're going to watch that more closely and keep that focus there.
Very good. And you did show, and you referenced this previously, you showed a slide where I think it was with Chris Rodemaker, right? And there was an image of a person behind the sow and in front of the sow, right?
Yep.
And what a big difference that every day you're looking at those sows, right?
Yep. And I think the interesting thing about that study was that's really what we expect to be happening every day on sow farms.
Right.
And sometimes we lose track of that focus. Again, it comes back to that focus. They put the focus on, and it made a difference. And so I think it's one of those take-home messages that tells us, going back to some of our regular standard operating procedures, that if we go back there and execute them, we're going to be able to get the performance we're expecting. And just making sure that we go back and pay attention to what we're doing. Yes, multitasking is great, but you got to pay attention to what you're supposed to be looking at.
Right. And you referenced this previously, and I wrote it down just to make sure that I caught it. The sow retention specialist, do you think that's really kind of the wave of the future potentially?
Yeah, I think it's where we have to make it an emphasis. And so it's like anything else in the industry, if we start to track it and we start to measure it and we start to have someone be responsible for it, we'll see it change. And so that's why I'm kind of excited about the idea and thinking about it in putting it into more herds.
Yeah, very good. It's almost like an investment in your herd to have somebody really focused on, gilts and sows and that process, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's a critical factor. We know that if we can make good choices,
Right.
And it's good production is all about making good choices, not choices that are handed to you.
Right.
And if you can make those good choices and you can have and make better choices, you're going to have better performance. And so I think that's one of the opportunities we have here is to allow ourselves to make more better choices.
Yeah.
And we can take the animals out of the herd. We can remove the animals from the herd that aren't performing, not the ones that aren't surviving.
Right. Right. That was a big point that you made early on up front, was you had kind of a chart showing all the reasons why, right, sows are removed from the herd, and we're calling them because of a lot of reasons, but we're not getting right. I mean, help explain that slide. Sorry, I'm not doing it justice.
What we're doing is ideally we'd be removing the older sows,
right,
because of performance, and that number has gone down over time because we haven't been as successful as keeping sows in the herd.
Right.
And so those animals are staying longer, and they're not necessarily the best sows,
right,
but they are staying in the herd. And so that's one of the challenges, and I think we need to work back to where that's a higher percentage of the animals exiting is the ones that aren't performing as well. And if we can get there, then all performance goes up.
Right. And one final point I'd like for you to elaborate on a little bit is body condition score, because you spent a little bit of time on that. How important is that?
Yeah, the body condition, I think, is a critical factor to make sure that the animals are prepared to go through their gestation and be ready to go into lactation and not be too heavy or not be too thin.
Right.
And that's going to be one of those keys to helping retain those animals into the herd, because then they're set up to perform well.
Right.
And if we get the conditioning right, that's going to help us in the long run of giving that animal the opportunity to do everything we're asking them to do.
Yeah, very good. Excellent. Well, thanks for all the information today, Paul.
You bet. It's my pleasure to be here.
Very good. This is Sarah Mikesell with the Pig Site.